I'm Bernie Flowers, one of Uncle Sam's wayward sons, and I intend to talk about important topics every week in hoping to improve our country and our way of life. Please like, share, and subscribe as we try to grow the channel and defend America's middle class. So now, let's get started. Our guest is Dr. Larry Doyle, candidate for Howard County School Board. Dr. Doyle, how are you doing today?
I am doing just fine and glad to see you again, Mr. Flowers.
You are looking very professorial today.
Thank you. I guess it shows that I taught college for about 15 years.
All right, you got quite an extensive background, and I think you're a great candidate for a school board. But why don't you tell the people about yourself and tell them why you are such a great candidate for school board?
Okay, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in Detroit, Michigan. I won't say what year because it's been so long ago. But before I was a year old, my family moved back to Louisville, Kentucky, which is my family home. That's my mother, father, and my cousins and extended family live there in Louisville, Kentucky. In fact, I tell people I'm probably one of the last people that you're going to meet that actually attended segregated schools in Louisville, Kentucky from K through 12. I come from a family that just absolutely loved education. I come from a family of educators. Believe it or not, my grandmother, who was born back in the 1800s, was a school teacher. My mom, after my father and she broke up, my mother went back to college, went back to school, went back to college when I was probably in about the sixth grade. So really, my formative years, I was watching my mom put herself through college with five kids. And then at the same time, I had aunts that were going to college, older cousins that were going to college. And I was one of those kids that took to school like a duck to water. I
Wow.
loved school. I hardly ever missed any days from school. And I was a straight A student. Actually, in fact, I like to tell people that I went to the same high school as Muhammad Ali.
Wow.
Just imagine what kind of experience that was.
I can imagine.
Yeah, so I was taught from the very beginning that you can do anything and be successful at life if you put in the work and you're willing to dedicate yourself to it, make that your purpose. And believe me, in more cases than not, you will wind up successful.
Amen. Now, I got another question for you. I
Uh-huh.
heard that you were one of the first Blacks that went to Johns Hopkins. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I sure will, and that's part of my story. I actually won a National Merit Scholarship. And by my winning a National Merit Scholarship, I was recruited by, almost every college in the United States and some beyond. And coming, kid from Kentucky, it's kind of amazing, it's kind of amusing in a way. But as you could imagine, I'd never heard of Johns Hopkins. Never heard of it. And anyway, the paperwork and all the admissions material was coming in from the different schools and whatever. And my mother realized that Johns Hopkins was trying to recruit me at that time. And I must admit that it was through affirmative action, which I do have to give some credit. And when my mom saw that, I did not want to attend Johns Hopkins. I'd never heard of it. A lot of people don't realize it, but at the time that I came through, Johns Hopkins was an all boys school.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Johns Hopkins was an all boys school. Yeah, this is the only time that my mother and I ever argued. And as you can see, she won the argument.
As I can see.
Right. I got a one-way ticket to Baltimore, Maryland.
Come back with a degree.
That's right, and the rest was history.
That's beautiful. That is a wonderful story. So let's talk about your race for school board here in Howard County. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, really, I've practiced, not only am I interested in education, and I love education, I have a law degree
Wow.
and a PhD.
Wow.
I just love school. I love packing up degrees and what have you. And really, what happened is when I was living in Ohio, and I lived in Ohio for many years, I would hear all these stories, just basically talking to different people. And you know, the story that is being told about the segregated schools in the South really just did not sit well with me at all.
I can
In
imagine.
fact, I used to laugh and joke with my friends in Ohio that you know, the polar black kids, they were in a one-room school with no books.
Hmm.
And I say to them, and I would say, well, how do you think I got into Johns Hopkins University? Unknown to a lot of people, some of these segregated schools that we talk about were excellent institutions of learning. And even though we talk about the HBCUs and you know, historic Black colleges and universities, a lot of people forget that there are also these schools are still in existence.
Hmm.
Like my high school, you're talking about these historic Black high schools. Just in fact, my ninth grade class produced 5 lawyers,
What?
5 lawyers out of one classroom.
Wow.
And then in my high school, we had a bunch of people that became lawyers, and one of my best friends became a medical doctor. And as the years went by, I really began to see this decline in educational levels, declines in civility,
Yeah.
you know, just declines in our society. And it really bothers me. Even now, it really does bother me. And one of the things that you will never find or hear in the mainstream media is that Black students, their academic standing has actually declined. I'm talking about graduation rates and test scores
Hmm.
have actually declined since integration.
That's terrible. That
Yeah,
is.
it really is. And so many of us, we talk about, you know, what are we going to do about, you know, the quality of education, you know, here, there. And as we all know, I mean, it's no secret that our Black kids and our Black boys in particular are falling behind, have fallen behind. And so many of these students today, I'm telling you, they graduate from high school and can barely read and write, hardly
That's
do
terrible.
any math, don't have any real skills to do too much of anything, which shows in the quality of life, you know, that people wind up with. And another thing, you know, I'm not against immigration, but then at the same time, we have hundreds and thousands of jobs that go unfilled. And we have to bring in immigrants and people from other countries to fill these jobs when we have our own people and own citizens here that aren't qualified for anything. We should be ashamed of ourselves.
We should, and we can do better.
We can
That's
do
why
better.
that's why I'm so thrilled about your candidacy, because I mean you have proved that it can be done. Anybody that wants to succeed can succeed if they're willing to put in the work.
If you're willing to put in the work, and you really have to have the right attitude
Right.
also towards school. When we really love school, we go to school, our attendance is up, we pay attention in school. We do not make ourselves discipline problems in these schools. And it really goes back to my platform as a candidate for the school board.
Hmm.
And I've got 3 things listed on my website that I think most people would find interesting. One of those is school safety. With all the fighting and violence in our schools today, which we did not have back in the old days. But the thing about it is we talk about safety for the kids, but very seldom do we hear people talk about safety for the staff,
Uh-oh.
safety
Uh-oh.
for our teachers. I'm gonna open a can of worms here. We talk about safety for
Go
the
ahead and
teachers,
there you go.
safety for the staff.
Hmm.
And we need to address all of these issues and ask ourselves, why are these students coming to school so disrespectful
I don't understand.
towards our teachers and we deserve better.
I agree, and I'm glad that you're bringing that up. But hey, let me ask you another question.
Uh-huh.
Here we go. How did you become interested in inequality in education and certainly the low culture of low expectations? That's something that that always sticks with me. So those things, again, the culture of low expectations and inequality in education. Tell us a little bit
Uh-huh.
about that.
Okay, how I really got involved in this, it really goes back to my own personal situation. I have three sons.
Really?
Yeah, I have three sons. I've
Wow.
got my oldest son, and then I've got twins
Hmm.
that are a couple years younger than he is. And when my kids were in the public schools in Toledo, Ohio, I watched how they communicated with and addressed the issues of the Black students in the class. And I can remember when my, me being a big disciplinarian, my three sons had passed all the proficiency tests by the time they were in the 10th or 11th grade.
Hmm.
So really from the 11th and 12th grade, because they had already passed their proficiency test, instead of offering my three sons advanced courses or courses that would benefit them in their careers or going to college and whatever, don't you know they would offer my kids study halls and no classes whatsoever. And you know what they would tell them and told me?
What's
Oh, well,
that?
you don't need any more. You've already passed the proficiency test. This is all you need.
Low expectations.
The culture of low expectations. And this is really across the board, where honestly, even the offerings, even
Right.
the schools that I went to offered four foreign languages. This is segregated schools. My
Hmm.
schools offered Spanish, French, Latin, and German.
You don't hear that these days.
You don't hear that these days. So I had 3 years of French before I even graduated from high school.
Wow.
I had mathematics all the way through calculus,
Hmm.
all the way through high school. When I got to Johns Hopkins, I never took a remedial course, never had tutoring of any sort. I jumped right on into the academic courses, just like everyone else,
That's how it's
all the
supposed
other
to be.
students. In fact, I want to add this. This is so amusing. When I was in high school, 12th grade, and I was making decisions about what college I was going to attend, you can just imagine that asking for letters of recommendation from my teachers, even. I
Hmm.
can still remember that when I offered my high school band director, I played French horn in the band,
Hmm.
and offered him to do a recommendation for me for Johns Hopkins. He looked at my paperwork, Mr. Flowers, and laughed and shook his head. You guys have got a lot of nerve. Because my other buddy, I really wanted to go to Columbia
Hmm.
in New York. But yeah, this culture of low expectations, they just don't expect,
Yeah.
Black kids, to be able, I think a lot of that has gone away. But
Oh,
I
yeah.
do think in a lot of our urban settings, oh my God, Baltimore, I shouldn't mention Baltimore, but the test scores are just absolutely atrocious.
They are. We can do better. Let's talk a
We,
little bit about inequality in education.
uh-huh.
So, what do you think about that?
Inequality, it's pathetic.
Yeah.
Still it's we still have this issue of kids being pushed through the curriculums in our public schools, and these kids that have you ever seen some of they almost have to put these kids on computers because their penmanship
Mm.
is so bad. These kids have very little knowledge about anything that's going on in the outside world. In
Wow.
fact, when I was teaching in Baltimore, I asked my students in Baltimore one day if they could name the largest city in Maryland.
Hmm.
Don't you know not one student in my class could name the largest city in Maryland? And we would
They were
actually
in it. Oh,
and then I
Lord.
would ask my students things like, can you name three states that border Maryland?
Wow.
They could not name one.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
And then I also taught GED classes where I realized that you've got, I hate to say it, but you've got a lot of adults out here that are really functionally illiterate.
That is terrible.
Yeah, it really
Absolutely
is.
terrible.
I mean, even timetables, you would really be surprised at the number of adults walking around. Not only can they barely read and write, they don't know, they can't tell you what 5 times 6 is.
There's terrible.
It's terrible. It's about inequality of education.
Right.
And it's really a shame that we have a public education system that allows people to get through the system with a lack of understanding that they get through the system with. And
Especially all the kind of money that's being spent on educating these kids. And, that money could be used a whole lot better or a little bit more in a structured manner. But I know a guy like you with all the education and background and experience that you have, you certainly know how to put all that stuff into place and make it better for everyone.
yeah, exactly. And then too, you got other issues that have really changed our society, and believe me, not for the better. Breakdown in our home situations. Breakdown in our marriage rates. I
Right.
forgot exactly what the number is, but the vast majority of Black children now are living in poverty, growing up in poverty,
Yeah.
and there's no father in the home.
About
Mom,
70%.
yeah, 70%. Mom oftentimes is working, maybe one, even two jobs, sometimes even three.
Yeah.
So the kids oftentimes are left to their own devices, and then they wind up falling, in line with the less desirable, kids in the neighborhood. And then you probably heard this phrase or expression in our schools today, but by many of the kids that doing well in school is considered acting white.
Let me tell you a little bit about myself growing up in the South.
Uh,
I once got in a fight because I was bringing books home from school and I was being told that I was acting white and talking white with my country Southern accent, but I
yeah,
got in fights with other blacks because I was acting white by trying to study.
exactly. This is exactly what I'm talking. Oh, you would really be surprised. I'm what you've met me. I'm what 5'6" and weigh about 150 pounds. So you can just imagine if it wasn't for the fact that I had an older brother who was, uh, he was a rough dude.
Uh-oh.
He and I were complete opposites. And even to this day, sometimes I give him a big hug and thank him because he's one of the reasons that I'm the person that I am today. Because not only did I have him, but I had 4 or 5 older cousins
Yeah.
that were pretty tough characters.
Big families
So
are a
therefore,
wonderful thing.
the bullies that would really have liked to have taught me a lesson, they were not able to because I was up under protection.
Well, I'm glad that thing's turned out. Hey, I got another question for you though.
Uh-huh.
Talk to me about peace studies. What is your interest in peace studies? Tell us about that.
Okay. I don't know whether you know it or not, but I got my PhD about 5 years ago. So I was pretty up in age when I got my PhD.
Hmm.
And I was living in Toledo, Ohio at the time. And I had decided to go back to school and get a PhD because I'd always wanted one. And when I applied for the position, in the PhD program, they assign you an advisor
Right.
based on what they think your interests are. At that time, I had never heard of peace studies. The advisor that they appointed me to is world renowned in the area of peace studies. This is, world renowned. His works, his papers have been read all over the world.
Hmm.
So they put me up under this guy. And I started taking classes from him. The more classes I took from him, the more excited and interested I became in the area of peace studies. And even with my running for Board of Education and with my interest in inequality in education, really ties into this whole thing about peace studies.
Okay.
And I practiced law for 15 years.
I
So
did not
obviously I've always been interested in ideas about justice and injustice.
There you go.
In fact, my family growing up in Kentucky was very, very interested in the civil rights movement. I grew up in the middle of the civil rights movement, and looking back on it, I did not realize until recently that I had actually marched with Dr. King.
Wow.
I actually marched with Dr. King. But this whole thing about peace studies is all about justice and injustice.
All right.
And as I got into the program and really got into it, in fact, even though my PhD is in education, I have a minor in peace studies.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really kind of got me away from the idea of racism. I understand racism, and to me, we're not a perfect nation by any stretch of the imagination. But with the way this nation has treated me, I have very little regrets. I cannot complain
There you go.
at all because this nation has allowed me to become the person that most people would only dream of, coming from the kind of background that I do. But that's really been when I began to realize that Black Americans, as Black Americans, sometimes I think we like to think that we have a monopoly on injustice towards us, but there are lots of groups in America and in the world and whatever that are also being subjected to injustice.
That's
And
right.
this is really where I really began to realize that injustice is also tied to violence.
Certainly.
And we talk about, and this is really where you really go into an in-depth understanding of violence and how violence violence is, you not only have direct violence, which we're more familiar with, but a lot of people really are not familiar with what they call structural injustice, where the system itself is set up in an unjust way so that people basically do not get what they are really entitled to as citizens.
Wow.
And this is really when I look at education, Howard County to me is a different animal. And this is really where, to me, I'm really, I'm more ears sometimes than maybe I should be. I love listening
That's a good
and
point.
gathering information from other people because my background really is in urban education with the basically also where you basically combine that with poverty, where it creates this situation like in Baltimore, Detroit, other large cities in America where you got these kinds of issues. But Howard County is really a very different animal because you have much more affluence here. You have affluence here with Black, white, and whatever ethnicity it is. We have a certain number of citizens that move here from Baltimore, but for the most part, Howard County really does have an excellent school system.
It does.
And the reason that I'm running is not because it's so bad. I do think that we can tweak it in ways that will make it an even better school system.
I agree 150%. And I really believe that you have the qualifications to make things better. And that's why we're having you on this program. People
And I
need to hear about
appreciate you having me. Right.
There you go. Well, let me ask you another question. Obviously, you are eminently qualified. I can't think of anybody more qualified to be on the school board than you. But I want to give you some time to say whatever you will to the audience. So if there's something you want to say, you go ahead and get it out there right now.
What I'm going to get out right now is the three major items in my platform. As I've stated before, safety is number one. Safety of our students, safety of our teachers, safety of our administrators, and also safety in the community even. Number two, we have got to pay our educators better than what they are being paid.
There you go.
We look at in fact, America now is probably rated, I don't know even if we're in the top 20.
It's terrible.
In education attainment in the world. At one time, we were always number one. We're way down the list now. So you're talking about safety, paying our teachers better, and last but not least is increasing the test scores of our minority students who are in a lot of cases are at the bottom in our test scores. But we not only have to look at test scores, we have to ask ourselves, what kind of citizens are we creating in our schools? We basically, when we know how important the home is, school is just as important. As the students get older, they spend more time at school than they do at home. And we have got to produce students that are qualified to be successful citizens and to make a contribution to our nation.
Yes, I think you got it covered. And I'm going to tell you, I really enjoy talking to you. I enjoy your background. I think you are the perfect candidate. You got the right je ne sais quoi, as they say.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, okay. So, Dr. Doyle, bottom line, how can people reach you if they need to?
My website is up and running,
Mm-hmm.
and through my email, I usually correspond. I stay on my email, check my email, but probably 10 times a day. And then
Okay.
I've got my website up and running. Have you had a chance to look at my website?
I have not, but I will certainly do that. How do I get to it?
I'll send you in fact, I don't know whether you can add it to the podcast in any way, in some kind of way.
I'll put it
Yeah,
on the show notes.
yeah,
So everybody see it.
I'll shoot it to you.
There you go. Outstanding. Well, look, I wish you the best of luck, and I will certainly do everything I can to get you elected. I know school board is a nonpartisan race, but
Mhm.
the issue of the day is that you are the right person, be you liberal, conservative, whatever you call, you are eminently qualified, and we support you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for having me on.
Dr. Doyle, thank you for coming on the program, and I want to have you on again sometime soon. And we just wish you the best of luck in your race for Howard County School Board.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Well, I'll be supporting you, and that's about it for now. This has been the Loyal Opposition Podcast, produced in association with Fallback Productions and other podcasts, and also Veterans for America First. So please like, share, and subscribe as we try to grow the channel and defend the middle class of America. Thank you. Be sure to get your copy of my book, Black Values Matter, as an ebook on Amazon, Audible, and Apple Books. And also remember, it's okay to disagree, but if we want our country to prosper, we've got to insist on unity, transparency, and civility for ourselves and for our fellow citizens. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week. This has been the Loyal Opposition Podcast, produced in association with Fallback Productions and other podcasters. I ask that you like, share, and subscribe as we try to grow our channel and protect and defend America's middle class. I ask that you be sure and get a copy of my book, Black Values Matter, available as an ebook on Amazon, Audible, and Apple Books. And also remember that it's okay to disagree, but if we want our country to prosper, we must insist on unity, transparency, and civility from ourselves and our fellow citizens. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.